I'm really excited to share the stage with Alaa Fadan, the wonderful superstar CEO, chairman of Telfaz 11. Richard Fitzgerald, CEO of Augustus Media. Of course, you all know Love in Dubai. How can you miss it? Love in Saudi and Smashy TV right out there. And I'm just going to really just jump right into it because the numbers are kind of mind-boggling. In the heart of the pandemic, as an art house cinema operator, we were watching in awe and shock and fear when the famous magical number of 1.1 billion subscriber base of the VOD platforms was a complete game changer, an increase of 26% from the previous year, and it meant all the terror, all the horror for art house cinemas. This will be the end. We're going to shut down cinemas all over the world, and here we are. Let's look at what it's like in the Middle East today. We'll start with some numbers. According to the latest report by Digital TV Research published last year, SVOD revenues for 20 countries in the Middle East grew by $2.3 billion between 2021 and 2027, reaching a total of $4 billion. Netflix will generate half, $1.9 billion, of MENA's $4 billion SVOD revenues by 2027. Second place, Disney Plus, which has come into the market this year, will be a long way behind with $589 million. And MENA will have 36.7 million SVOD subscriptions by 2027. That's 10% of the MENA population, with Netflix accounting for over 30% of this. Disney Plus will grow to 6.5 million subscribers by then, and the regional players, Stars Play will have 2.9 million, and Shahid VIP will follow with 1.3 million. So those are huge numbers. What's your take on this complete shift in the way that we're watching content?
Please, go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I think, there was just an NFT talk before, and with Web3, people talk a lot about pattern recognition. People talk a lot about, what happened when the .com crashed and social networks came up, and people try and explain NFTs and Web3 in this is like it was when it was the start of the internet and things like that. And that's the narrative. That's what a lot of people are talking about. But with what you mentioned, those statistics, the pattern recognition there is what happened when cable came in. And cable came into the US in the late 80s. NBC Middle East Broadcasting is a 1985 entity out of London, so that's pan-Arab cable, right? And that's the pattern recognition there. And two brothers set up ESPN, Entertainment Sports News Network, in 1978, and someone asked them how many cable subscribers will be in the US by the end of the 80s, and they didn't know. They were backed by the Gettys, and no one knew, and they left the company, but they thought maybe 1 million. There was 80 million cable subscribers by the end of the 80s. So I think we're going through a similar shift, and it has so many different elements to it, from a cinema Akil point of view, in terms of art house and windows and theatrical windows and things like that, from a production point of view, from a distribution point of view, and also, with Smashy, from a brand creation and technology point of view, there's a whole shift. There's a shift in consumer devices. There's smart TV penetration numbers as well that we could talk about. There's
10%, right?
There's ad tech, and there's so many different things. When a new economy is being created, there isn't a name for this. There's a name for the creator economy or Web3. There's no real the name is streaming, right? And there's, Reed Hastings says that everything on the internet will be streamed. Like, this channel flicking won't happen. It'll be app flicking. So I think that's what we're in the middle of. Pandemic accelerated, but it's fascinating what's happening in this space, which is great to be talking about.
Right. Alaa, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, we all know it was headed that way already, right? With content and consumption online, streaming. Of course, the pandemic accelerated it. It's all about behavior and consumer behavior. So that's why we're seeing that, how the rapid growth, the boost and subscription, these really optimistic kind of predictions with the growth and the viewership, and it's all leading towards like a very, very strong and a big industry, especially in kind of the production side of it, just because of how we see like the streamers and other streaming companies are actually interested in the market. They're actually seeing the growth, and it's definitely how the behavior is actually kind of making that shift happen towards that area.
I'm going to pick up on that because we just saw the release of the first Arabic language feature film produced by Netflix come out last month, Perfect Strangers, a remake of Perfette Conosciute, which is an Italian film. It was made in 5 different countries, and this was the first Arab remake of it, starring Mona Zaki and George Khabbaz. Everybody heard about it. You heard the scandals, Mona Zaki's underwear, all that stuff, right? So is this sort of a sort of a silver lining, a kind of a beacon of great things to come for Arab content on the streaming platforms, or is this an anomaly that's just a hype and excitement moment and will die down in terms of potential for content coming out of the region, investment in content coming out of the region?
No, absolutely. It's just a glimpse of what to come, and especially in the region, and specifically for Saudi, I think, because Saudi, I think it's really a black box for the rest of the world. So far, like what people know about Saudi, and maybe kind of a little generally about the region, is what they see in the media, is what they see in Hollywood films. But there are so many different and amazing like stories that are very specific to the area that could be told, but they have very universal appeal, but they're very specific. The little nuances of culture in Saudi that will be very interesting for the rest of the world to see. And I think people haven't seen that yet coming out from Saudi. So I think there's going to be a huge interest from content that's going to come out from here. There is, we're still not seeing, the kind of interest in that content. People are still going to foreign films or American films or Hollywood films, but I think it's because they haven't seen great content and that kind of films and shows. They're just a glimpse of what's to come, I think. Yeah.
Richard, you want to take it?
I totally agree, and I think maybe Telfaz have you're making movies for Netflix, and Netflix have that ability, like you described with Perfect Strangers, to create that talkability. Somehow that's what they do, right? They're that global studio, and people end up talking about shows on Netflix. So, but I don't know if it's a tipping point. I think it's part of a narrative, right? If we look back, Shahid have spent $1 billion, which is nothing when we hear of the global numbers of how much, I think Netflix are between 17 and 20 billion a year. And Shahid, up until say 2020, they'd spend $1 billion of content in 10 years, right? So there's a kind of a swell that's coming up, and there is a lot more content. Like I personally, when I moved to the region 10 years ago, I couldn't watch Arabic content, and now all I watch is Arabic shows with subtitles for the last 4 or 5 years, and there's a change. 4 or 5 years ago, I could only watch, say, Al Haiba or a few others, and now there's too much, and I don't know how to pick.
But do you watch them because you're working in the region and you're interested in the region, or is it because the entertainment value has changed?
So, look, personally, I would prefer the shows that are good in Arabic, like Rashash or these shows. They're actually not the best ones to learn from in Arabic, right? Like the ones with more dialogue, like the Lebanese soap shows, or say Finding Alaa, or these ones are easier for me to learn from. But yeah, so I'm just interested. I just personally, it's a consumer choice of what content I would consume. But it's a narrative, it's an anecdote around what's happening in production, right? And I don't know if it's a tipping point, but there's definitely more and more investment into this type of content.
Do you think that we're seeing a shift in the way that we view Arabic? I mean, Perfect Strangers is a sort of, case study of a transition from your kind of commercial, big screen, Egyptian or, Lebanese films that are made for a big box office hit. And you have your independents that do the film circuit, the stuff that we show in our single screen cinema. And then there's this, middle ground that Perfect Strangers was sort of able to hit with the kind of stuff they were talking about, with the actors, with even stylistically. What are the interesting opportunities creatively that you can do now with specifically working with streamers? What kind of windows do they allow that perhaps the conventional studio model, the conventional even free-to-air model didn't allow you to do?
So I can, speak from our experience with the streamers, and streamers kind of like Netflix. I think they're very smart in how they're kind of approaching coming into the region, and they're actually kind of choosing the right partners to kind of partner with, just to make sure.
Well, they chose you, so.
Well, we're one of them, I guess. But we kind of see the pattern of who they're trying to work with, and their strategy is, let's go to the people who actually can speak to that culture and who can tell stories from that culture, and we'll kind of enable them with our experience of the storytelling and the technicalities of actually filmmaking and the production stuff. But how they're really thinking about it is like we need to, in Arabic they say "At al-khubz khabbazo." So just go to the people who are actually living these stories and let them tell these stories. The film you talked about is an example, but it's a little different because it's an Italian movie. It's already kind of established. It's following it. It already got its success. So we know they kind of adapted it to Arabic. I think what's gonna happen now, you're gonna see a lot more stories actually coming from this region, new stories coming out from this region, fantastic stories that, like I said, the world hasn't seen yet. So they're giving that opportunity to them. For us, they're doing different models. So like, okay, we can kind of fund the whole production for you guys, or we'll just help the world see the productions that that license it from you.
Which is what you did with the 8 Windows in the Desert, right?
Right. So 8 Windows in the Desert, we had a bunch of short films that won a couple of awards, a few awards in festivals. We just had them in the drawer. When they came up,
we showed them at Cinema Akil before.
And we showed it. Yeah, Cinema Akil was ahead of everybody. They showed it and they kind of recognized it, and we said, hey, we kind of showcase these like separate, independent short films, which some of them won awards, and they're like, great, let's do it, let's take it, and we put it on. We kind of packaged it and we put it on a platform as just 6 Windows of the Desert, 6 films from Saudi, and it made a huge difference with them. So then they came back and they were like, okay, let's kind of work together on how we can make feature films, and we had that a big 8-picture deal with them. So that's, I think, that kind of attention is helping production companies, storytellers to kind of tell stories from the region.
I want to talk about how you're placing your bets. I mean, you guys are setting up your own technology, your dashboards. You recently tapped Vestas Nimbus to run your live streaming for Smashy TV 24/7. You guys are working with the big VOD giants. How are you placing your bets? Where do you think the future is?
Well, I think just to echo what Alaa said around, I think that Windows in the Desert is perfect answer to your question in terms of the formats, right? Like, I was fascinated to see how that show that was big on Netflix maybe 18 months ago, The Queen's Gambit, then the story behind why that was never a movie, even though he tried to make it as a movie for 20 years, but it just would lose the story, and that a 7-part series worked. And I think we're seeing that now in the Arab world. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in a month's time in Ramadan, to see what are the formats, how do they sustain that story over 30 episodes, and things like that. I think, and to answer the question, one of our bets is that streaming is different to linear programming, and formats are unconstrained. Like, I'm super fascinated with what's happening on Twitch, because for me, it's not gaming, it's that unconstrained live stream. We might think of Joe Rogan in that format of that 2 hours or whatever, but it's unconstrained. Like, the history of TV, you look at the Tonight Show was 11:30, and why did that happen? Is because the TV in the 50s used to just shut at 11, so they put a live thing on and used to break tables and chairs in the middle of it, but they thought no one was up, so no one watches. And then it evolved from that, and for 60 years it became the time slot. And now what I fear is happening is the likes of CNN Plus and others are trying to put technology first and go, how do we move from a CapEx to an OpEx model? How do we move away from production on-prem to production in the cloud? And I think that's the answer. But that's only the distribution answer. That is a answer. That's to get all the content that was happening elsewhere in amazing studios around the world onto streaming. That's one part of the puzzle. The other part is the programming. And, I've been trying to find producers in the region who see this and want to explore and want to test, because I think that's where you'll find the answer. And I don't know if that's the same in premium storytelling, but for us, we're in a non-scripted space. And we can do documentaries and we can do other things, but we're staying in a non-scripted space just to put some restraint around what we can do. But really, we're trying to figure out that new type of live streaming, whether it's sports or shows and things like that, in an unconstrained way. And we're placing our bets in streaming, like in live linear streaming. You know, some other stats: 10% of the Middle East has a smart TV in their home. So they can app click. Only 10%. That number is going to be 100% in the US in 2025. It'll be 20% here. So that's to do with affluency. It's to do with many things. It's to do with the ecosystem. There's no Roku here yet. Things like that. So I really think that's where we're putting our bets. But we're trying to figure out everything at the same time. We're trying to build IP around Smashy. What does it stand for? What's that media lens? We're trying to build technology, and we're also trying to build content all together at the same time.
And you're also an AVOD platform, so is that something that you think will change eventually and go with a more premium or subscriber-based SVOD, or is that the model that you're...
Yeah, I'm glad I don't speak at too many conferences, because I don't know the answer to that. Like many tech content conferences over the years here put SVOD and AVOD on separate, they talk about them differently. I've just mixed them together, like Smashy subscription and advertising. It's got, you call it freemium or whatever, it's got video clips. We're streaming behind this stage here at the moment, and to watch the stream, you have to go in and pay for it. Or at the moment, it's free on YouTube. So we're figuring this out. It's about those three elements of, can we make good content? Are we building a media lens that resonates? And any media content company, I think with content and movies and shows is a little different, but generally, because I'll tell you why it's different, but generally in media, we're swimming upstream against two big things: tech giants platforms and the creator economy, right? So is there any room for news and media lenses in the middle, right? It's tricky. It's a hard thing to answer. Like if we think of podcasts, the two biggest podcasts in the world, one is producer himself, Joe Rogan, and to Spotify's what's the word?
Chagrin.
What?
Chagrin.
Yeah. What was that? Sugar.
Chagrin. It's a Yiddish word. For,
okay. Chagrin. They couldn't get rid of him, kind of, because because he was making a show. But then the second biggest podcast in the world is made by the New York Times. So I think it's just interesting about that. But we are going against two things. But the way we see it is, you need media. You need something in the middle. If one good podcast on sport won't talk about the other one, so who's going to talk about what they're doing, right? So I think that's the lens in the middle that we're trying to do.
Alaa, you guys are playing a different game. You're on Netflix. You're working with the giants, 30% by 2027. Right. What's the thinking behind that?
It is a different game. We're not really thinking about the actual platform, or kind of building a tech platform. So we're not having these conversations whether whether it's subscription or ad supported. Actually, we're placing our bets right now on actually creating the content, making the films, going more on creating IPs, having these kind of assets. It's just, for us, that's the direction we go, because we kind of see the potential of everybody coming in. Like you said, Netflix is looking that like they're going to be doing well or dominating. There are some players that are still going to come, so we're going to see a lot of demand, a lot of kind of competition on content, and so we want to be the content providers. We want to be the people who actually provide that content for now, and we're good at it. We've had a lot of experience with actually engaging with audience, creating good stories, authentic stories that come from the region. That's our strength. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. So our bets are on actually creating premium content, long-form content, feature films, limited series, that type of stuff. Especially what's going on with Saudi, there's a lot of focus on actually investing in theaters and exhibitors. Actually, it's becoming a huge region for the world to kind of look at box office. They're looking at maybe about $1 billion to become $1 billion market by 2024, 2025. That's in a few years. So it's going to be a big market. So that's where we're kind of making our bets on. And then maybe later on, we kind of leverage our digital presence that we built with it, and see how we can create a platform. But right now, we're really interested in IPs.
Yeah, because you were like the renegade boys and girls, right? You were the ones that self-distributed, you created, you funded, you were going after your own, interest, your own funding, your own formula, and that's what made Tilfaz the name that it is today, right?
Exactly.
How is that going to be affected as you kind of now tie yourself closely to, theaters or theater operators like Movie, the Netflixes of the world, eventually other potential streaming platforms, or even other free-to-air or pay TV, whoever's, OSN is launching its OSN studios, right? So you have a lot of different players that are all after that Saudi, right? So what are you guys doing in that sense, and how is it changing your thinking internally?
Digital is still important, right? It's the future, so that's not something that we're kind of discounting. It's just we see an opportunity, like how we do in Tilfaz. We kind of try to be pioneers or trailblaze, at least in the area, right? So when we started in 2010, that kind of digital guerrilla style content creating movement was still happening. We kind of led that. We're happy that it grew to where it is today. But now we see the opportunity in actually creating feature films, limited series, premium stuff that comes out from the region. And that's kind of where we're trying to kind of trailblaze. Digital will always be important, Of course, Richard knows that, and we're gonna have that handy. But we want to kind of get a stronghold on content, premium content, while we do kind of digital. The whole model and our whole strategy shifted towards that area. So even our digital content now has become towards the actual industry, the filmmaking industry, the people who love cinema, like the people who kind of go to cinema Akil, right? These are the people that we're targeting. So we're making a lot of podcasts and talking with industry people. We're making content about the industry and how films are made, that type of stuff. So we're kind of focusing all our digital content. We're still there, but it's less entertainment, more towards building that kind of the community around actually the cinema lovers.
I'm going to come back to that because I have an interest in understanding where the theatrical window looks like in Saudi. But before we get there, I'm curious to see your take on specialized VOD models, whether it's AVOD or SVOD or even linear. You're looking at platforms like Crunchyroll, like Shudder, or even Deco for LGBTQIA content. You have super specialized, or even for the art house lovers, the cinephiles. Criterion launched its own VOD. Of course, Movie being another one. What are the opportunities? Are there opportunities? Are we there as a market in the region to create those? You saw a few of them come up during the pandemic, like Aflamuna or like Shasha TV. And do we have a big enough content market at the moment to create such specialized subscription windows?
Yeah, I think to kind of bring the two questions and points together, I think the region has the opportunity to create its own narrative. We don't necessarily have to follow what the US is saying around streaming. There's about theatrical windows, what Warner Brothers or whatever they're called now, what they did during the pandemic, and now it's changing to 30 days and different things are happening. But to what Telfaz are doing and in Saudi, you can make new rules around distribution, and to the same point around niche versus carrier versus where do you put it. Like, I think it is sort of up for grabs, but definitely distribution, to think about partnerships is important. Even if you do a niche platform like Curiosity Stream or something like that, or Crunchyroll, many people won't think that the first thing to do is build direct to consumer, whether it's sports, right? But then they realize that it mightn't necessarily work for them. And the default, like Smashy, the default is to build an app and to have a subscription. But actually, we're quite aware of what's happening. We're aware that all the platforms are taking some other streams and putting them on them. Like, I think the CEO of Stars Play Arabia said that, I don't have the exact figure, but they've signed up 20 to 25 live channels onto their platform in the last year or so, right? Because they never had live streaming. Like OSN don't do sports anymore. Now the sports is on Stars Play, right? So there's a lot of partnerships happening. There's a lot of mix happening, which again is to the point, IP and having that discipline around what those platforms you mentioned, people who would have known of them will know what they stand for, because the content is what it is. But it doesn't mean that you only get it by going to their platform. You can get it anywhere. Like some examples, WWE, the wrestling, who have events in Saudi as well, they were one of the first. They launched in 2014. And by a year or two ago, they had 1 million people paying $10 a month, subscribers. And now they don't do direct-to-consumer anymore. They sold it to one of the merged things, I think Paramount Plus, no, the other one, the one on their Comcast. What's it called? Peacock. Yeah, so Peacock, they sold it to
NBC.
them. Yeah, so they sold it to them for, so $10 a month by 1 million is whatever, 100 million a year. They sold it for 200 million, licensed the content annual deal, and Peacock sell their subscription for $7 a month. Right? And then many people will comment and say, oh, Premier League and football rights, they should go direct to consumer, and they might. And then in 5 years' time, Apple might pay them to take it and put it back. So there's going to be so much of this moving stuff around, which is why I think which is why we focus so much on digital, because we don't do events, we don't do merchandise, we don't do anything else, because it's so hard to figure out. And you really need to understand what your IP is, what your content is, what your monetization model is, and make these decisions all the time.
So speaking of understanding yourself, I'm going to go back to what you were saying about the sort of the investment in building an actual film, culture in Saudi. You're not just producing content, putting it out there on these platforms. Right. Your first feature film by the brothers Qudus, Sohaib and Faris Qudus, premiered in the middle of the pandemic, July 2020, and clocked in like 100,000 at the box office. It was a huge success, and then went straight to VOD after 2 week release, I believe, or 3 week release, and went to Netflix. It lived there. I'm wondering, with all of this excitement about the Red Sea Film Festival, I was there in December. There's, the moment in the sun for Saudi filmmakers to shine, to have a theatrical window. You do have 15 cinemas across Saudi now, and it's growing. By the end of the year, it's supposed to hit, I think, 45. So we're looking at a huge growth and investment in terms of the box office, in terms of betting on the Saudi box office to make up for lost time. What is your take on that? What is the future of theatrical for Saudi?
I mean, we see the kind of the investment that's going in. There's a lot of government interest in the kind of space. There's a lot of government interest, incentives that are put. Last month they announced over $1 billion, like 1.1 billion in actual support in digital content and actual content. So, and we're seeing exhibitors like Movie and Vox that are actually doing a lot of investment and actually putting up theaters.
But do you think the audience is going to follow that investment, or are they just going to leapfrog over the theatrical window and just go where the content is? If you continue to, release amazing, content on the Netflixes and the giants.
I mean, Saudi is a very unique place, right? Cinema is new to them, new to everybody. So people are just now like realizing that this could be a part of my daily entertainment or my weekly entertainment to go to watch films. Saudis, like when they traveled, they didn't go. They had they wanted to travel. They went to Bahrain. They came to UAE to go to the cinema. That they're movie lovers, and now finally they have the chance to do it. So it's very unique in the sense that there's a lot of investment, and we see that people are gonna go watch even if they have these subscriptions to video on demand. Is still a unique experience. I think it's up to the content or the producers to actually make films that lends itself to actual cinema experience. That's different, and then maybe you'll see more of the kind of drama and that type of stuff and series on the Netflix's.
To put it into perspective, we're talking about $283 million in 2021. That's a 95% increase since 2020. So I think the box office in Saudi has got a long way to go, and I think people are really excited to be back. My last question to wrap this up is, what is so hard about creating content? Why is it so hard to produce premium content? What is the challenge? Is it hard? Is there infrastructure? Is it censorship? Is it talent? Is it investment and funding? First with you, Richard.
Yeah, I think it's like any industry. To produce good quality product is hard. You need expertise, but you also need you need a commercial industry around it. You need an ecosystem that monetizes. And I think that isn't something that can be handed. I think that needs to be created. It's hard, but it's challenging. I've been thinking lately about Quibi, the one that failed, and I'm thinking, well, did they get the timing wrong? Because it's a very short form year now, and maybe something like that can emerge again in future. That's premium content in a shorter form, because it's all about shorts at the moment, but yeah, it is hard. Like they had billions of dollars or whatever they had, and loads of experience, and they failed. So it's hard, but it's exciting.
Yeah, for me, it's very clear. It's talent. It's a nascent, industry in Saudi, so we're still kind of developing that talent. We've been doing it for 10 years, and we still feel there's not enough talent out there, especially in, the writers. The production, there has been a production kind of industry, but with writing, actually kind of development, that whole side, that's very important, the kind of financial side of it. So it's also starting to shape up in Saudi, so the kind of the ecosystem of investment, and we kind of got into that as well. We raised money, so there's a lot of interest in actually investing in content and actual content IPs as assets. So that's, and Telfaz was leading that as well. But really, number one is talent, and it will take time. It will get there. There are actually people who are going to study on scholarships, film directing and writing and all that creative aspects of the filmmaking that's happening. So we're going to see a big increase in the next coming years in talent. But until then, we're just going to have to kind of, wait and see.
Does censorship play any role in the stories that we're able to tell in this region, whether it's documentary, drama, short form?
I'm so sorry.
That's a big question to lead on.
If we can answer it in 30 seconds each, because we're a bit out of time. But yeah, go ahead.
It could be a yes or no.
Well, we've thought a lot about this with Love in Dubai, and I think no is the answer, because you just need to understand what's the equivalent of a constitution that dictates censorship in other places, right? What's the equivalent here? And if you can understand that, then no, it's just about respect, or on different levels. I don't think it does. I don't think it, when I said it was hard, I meant more from reaching the audience and the platforms and the fragmentation of media. I didn't mean it. I don't think it's hard from a censorship point of view.
Alaa.
I think yes, but it will be less and less over time.
Thank you so much. Richard Fitzgerald, Alaa, Fadan, Telfaz 11.
Thank you.